Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Prescribing the Right Software to Run Your Practice, presented by J.P. Lassard of Miles Technologies. Please be aware that there will be a question and answer portion today at the end of the webinar. To avoid frequent interruptions during the webinar, please type your questions in the question box located to the right of your screen. They will be answered in the order received during the question and answer portion. Additionally, an electronic version of this presentation will be emailed to all participants following completion of today's webinar, and a recorded version will be available on the website for members only. Again, NJMGMA would like to thank you for attending, and I'll now turn things over to JP.
Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate your time today. Main thing I'm going to be talking about is prescribing the right software to run your practice. This could be any software package, so I'm going to give you a framework for how to choose the right software for any needs that your particular practice or group or business happens to have. So, quick introduction. This is me. I'm president of Business Software Solutions at Miles Technologies. I've been working in the technology field for quite a while, in particular in software and business strategy and fitting the two together. Most important thing I would say about my experience and the message that I'd like to share with everybody is for you to see software as a valuable investment as opposed to an expense. And that's what most of this session is going to be about, which is how you can get the most return on investment for the software that you choose to run any portion of your practice or your business. So that's the most important thing about me. The rest of this is about the process. Main purpose today is to enable you and your trusted advisor group to select the very best software for your group based on your needs. Couple key takeaways that I would like you to take out of our discussion today. Number one is an actual framework for the process that you can apply to choosing any software, whether it is a practice management software, whether it's something like we're going to go over today in our example, whether it's any piece of software, that you have a framework that you can actually apply to any of those processes. So because of this, because I want it to be a framework, and I know we're going to share the presentation, there are some extra text-heavy sections of the presentation, yet we'll talk through most of those, and you can refer back to them as you use this process later. Second takeaway is confidence in your ability to make the best decision. You know, a lot of people go into technology and software in particular, and they just don't feel confident in that they're making the best decision. They're picking something based on some features, a comparison chart that's published on the manufacturer's website, just the recommendation of somebody else, and they're just not confident going into that final decision. So I want you to, at the end of today, to be able to go through this process, and when you make a decision, that you're confident you've picked the very best solution. So what we are going to use today as an example will be a document management solution. So with EHR and paperwork in the medical industry, this is probably something that you all are familiar with. So hopefully it will be relevant to things that you either already do or have looked at in the past or will look at in the future. So I'm going to go through the process with an actual example. And what I'd ask for each of you as well is to come up with something in your head. You probably already have something if you're attending this webinar that either you want to add or replace it within your practice or within your group, that if there's an example of a software package, you know, write that down and kind of go through this process as I go through it for document management. Go through it yourself with that particular example in mind, and feel free to ask questions about that when we get to the Q&A session about, you know, how that example could work through this process. So there's three main areas that we're going to talk about today. First is preparation. We're going to spend about half our time between now and the end talking about preparation, and it's the portion that I believe most people aren't sure how to tackle the best. A lot of people will jump straight into the assessment or even the decision-making phase, and that's a mistake, and that's how you don't pick the very best solution. So preparation is where we're going to focus most of our time, and how can you prepare properly so that you're confident in making that decision at the end. So straight into it. What should you start with? Start with the business value. Don't start with a feature list. Don't start with, you know, what is it that this needs to do? Start with what you expect to get out of it. Yeah, I always like to equate it to, if you're hiring a person, you know, think of your technology and your software in a similar way. I expect to get certain value. I have certain expectations out of you software. So what I want you to do is make our business better. So envision that business value. and dream big. When I say unleash your imagination about software, it just means that there's no reason that technology can't be a strategic advantage for you. And just because you feel like you have to use technology in today's day and age, don't just feel like it's something you have to do and just use something and pick something that's going to get you in line with today's technology. Think of it as an opportunity to put yourself ahead. Think of it as an opportunity to do things more efficiently and even better than they are today. I would encourage you not to compromise your vision at this stage. Dream big and think about what's the ideal. If I could possibly get something out of this that would be great for our business or great for our practice, what does that look like? Don't compromise yet. Trust me, you're going to have to compromise when you get down to the individual solutions. There's going to be pieces of your dream that you may not be able to do, but don't do it yet. Don't cut yourself off too early from that process. So part of this business value is getting other people involved early. A lot of times people will wait to get their trusted advisor group. I'm calling this a tag group. We'll talk about this throughout the day today. When they get that group together, get them together as early as possible. Right when you start thinking about, hey, we need a new document management solution, that's when you want to put together this group of people. This could be anywhere from 2 to 10 people. Try to keep it in the smaller side if possible. But these are the people that are going to be involved throughout the decision-making process. Get their ideas, get their input on the vision itself. For putting that group together, think about who's going to be the most impacted by this particular solution. I'll show you an example for the document management solution. Here's a document we'll be going back and forth on today. And this is kind of an overview, and it's got different pieces of how to go through the process. So I'm going to start with my trusted advisor group. When I put this together for a document management solution, these are some people I might want to put on that team. I'm going to put my office manager. I'm going to put one of our top billing processors. I'm going to put my IT consultant. These are people that have different perspectives on this process that I'm going to be addressing, and their perspective is important because your IT person is going to know what you have set up now and how the integrations are going to work. Your office manager is going to know what processes are in place and what things maybe take the most time. Your billing processor is going to have ideas about maybe some of the paperwork that they deal with. It's whatever your group should be based on the software and the processes that you're focusing on. So if they have good input, you want to put them on that tag group. Next step is actually capturing your vision. Honing it, writing it down, have a brainstorming session. This is a vision. You're trying to dream big, and then you want to share it. So you want to create a business value statement. And again, I'm going to go back to our prep document. This is one of the things that you want to put into any software selection process. This is just an example for a document management system. These numbers may be a little out of line, a little overblown, but you want to try to quantify what's the value going to be for this software. In this case, let's say our new document management system is going to save us a total of 20 to 30 hours per week per location, which is going to in turn allow us to reduce our part-time staffing needs. Again, plug in your specific value that you're going to get here. And try to come up with other ideas too. So maybe this is the main objective because this is going to turn into a quantifiable number. Maybe it will also allow you to see more patients per day per practitioner without reducing the time per patient that they spend, just because they have access to the electronic paperwork more quickly. Again, that may or may not be true of this particular solution. It's just an example for how can you dream big, and then put a number on it. Even though you may not achieve this number, you try to put a number on this for this solution that you're trying to pick so that you can test against this later on. And then share it with everybody that's involved. Share it with your trusted advisor group so they all keep this as their kind of North Star. You're going to keep going back to this throughout the process just to make sure that we're not losing sight of what we're trying to accomplish just because we found a great solution. But if it doesn't accomplish that goal and that value for you, then it's not worth going with that solution. Next step is actually clarify the business requirements themselves. So this is not a feature list. This is actually a list of how you envision your process working itself. So how do you want it to run by doing this? This is where your trusted advisor group comes in. Remind people of the vision and then go through and actually come up with some examples of what are the business processes going to look like. So again, document management solution, I want to categorize what's the process that we do. We go through scanning, sorting, notification, original handling, and electronic, and write down how do you want the process to work. I'll just go through a couple of these examples. So I'm able to scan a stack of paperwork, different types, different patients, without having to monitor it or direct the scanning process. How am I going to save that 20 to 30 hours is that I don't have to babysit the scanning process or even the sorting process. So the sorting process should be automated. It should automatically recognize, which patient, which practitioner, which type of document. It should sort those out. It should let us know when it's finished with the process so that I don't have to stand there and wait for it to finish and then go check and sort and all those things yourself. And then it should also maybe make it easier for me to handle the originals. If after I scan it, I want to shred them, maybe there's some way for that to be a very close solution so that I don't have to run around the office in 3 different places. And finally, what's most important is that it takes that electronic document and it attaches it somewhere that we can easily get to it. So again, these are all about how the process is going to work. From here is where you're going to build your feature list, but this is about the processes themselves. So some questions you can ask to create that list, create these questions for yourself. One, how does your process work today? What things have to remain part of the process or be part of the result? You want to be sure that those become part of your requirements list later on. What are your current pain points? So if the main thing I want to do is save time, talk about what things take the most time today so that you can focus on those when you look for your features. And then just again, part of the dreaming process, what else could help you accomplish that business value goal? If the solution provided it, what else? What else could it do? Don't worry yet about whether there's any solution out there in the world that does it yet. Just write it down. If it did this, it would be fantastic and it would save us time. And then you fill in your own based on the process or solution. So these are just example questions that you would ask every time you're going to go through a process like this. And I showed you for document management system, if you're doing something for accounting or a practice management solution, then you would have different questions that you might ask also. So create that list of questions for yourself and ask those as you go around to your trusted advisor group and as you make the list yourself. And again, it's just how do you want the process to look? And then you write down your list. Okay, this is where a lot of people actually start the process. They'll skip those previous 2 steps that I mentioned, and they might jump straight into creating this feature and evaluation criteria list. And it's an easy place to start because that's how most products are going to present themselves. They're going to say, here's all the top 10 features that we have available for you, but they're not going to tell you, unless you have those last 2 parts, how it actually fits into your practice or your business and what value it's going to give you. So you have to start with those first 2 parts if you're going to actually realize that key return on investment by choosing the right software. But you're going to create this list. You're going to use your business value statement. You're going to use your process requirements and just start writing down, okay, what features would contribute to that ideal process, that ideal workflow that I'm envisioning here? I want to assign a priority or importance to each one. Could be while you're filling out the list. That's the easiest time to do it because you're creating the list based on looking at that business value statement and based on looking at that process. So I'm going to look at this process. This is how I want it to run. I'm going to look at, again, I want to save time. I want to be able to see more patients per day. Those are the 2 things that I want to be able to do. So I'm going to start filling out a chart at this point. So this is where your comparison chart that may look familiar to some of you will come in. You're going to start filling this out. I'm going to start plugging in some requirements. And I've got a specific example as we go through this. But start filling those in and start putting the importance to you as to what they are as you go. Now you can always resort the importance later. As you see the entire list, you might say, well, that might not be as important as I originally thought, or you know what, this really is something we need in order to accomplish our vision. You can sort those later, but assign them as you go and put them in priority order. And then put your most important items at the top. This is going to give you your checklist, your evaluation criteria once you get into the assessment stage, that you're going to use this as your primary tool. Now that you've got that list, you want to identify some as what I call make or break. So these are just simple yes, no questions. It either is true or it's false. So these would be the things that you say, you know what, in order for it to accomplish our vision, it absolutely has to have this. So you don't want any gray area items on this one. You want to be able to just say yes or no, and that's going to help you pre-qualify certain solutions, because if they just don't have this make or break feature, you really don't need to spend a lot of time evaluating it. It's just not going to work for you. Move on to the next thing. Next step, questions to ask. These are questions you're going to ask about each of the solutions that you're going through. So each solution in your evaluation criteria, you want to go through and come up with these questions. So just going to share. These are some questions I would recommend for any software solution. So if there's a software solution, no matter what the solution is, these are ideas for what you could ask. You're going to fill in additional questions as well, but I would always ask, you need to know what's the pricing structure. You know, this is in order for you to evaluate your ROI, then you need to understand what's the cost of this solution. Make sure you check the upfront and ongoing costs. Some solutions have a very low upfront cost, but there's a really high maintenance or licensing cost ongoing. So you want to understand that. You want to understand what's included. What do I get as part of this base price versus what do you consider an add-on? You know, maybe there's something that you have as a must-have, as a make or break feature, they're considering an add-on, and if you're only looking at their base cost and the upfront cost, there's some hidden costs down the road that you get surprised by, and that'll damage your ROI. So essentially look at both of these things, make sure you understand the pricing structure and understand what's an add-on. The next few are really about the people factor, the support factors. What assistance is included or available? And this is huge. One of the biggest ways to not get good value from your software or any technology is to not implement it properly, for people to not use it properly. So it could be the best solution in the world, and if your people aren't trained on how to use it and they're not using it effectively, then it's basically worth nothing, or it's definitely not worth as much as you're spending on it. So you want to be sure that the solution provider either has these services available or that you can find someone to help you with these. So what's available, and is it included in the cost? Things like training, ongoing tech support, data migration. If it's a system like accounting or your PMS system, do you need to move information from one system to the other? Are they going to help you with that? If so, you know, what's the cost involved? So again, you can consider all these factors as you compare the different solutions. What are their available support methods? You know, do they have telephone? Do they have live support? Do they happen to use offshore support teams? That sometimes that's okay. If it's something that maybe it's not business critical to you, then maybe that's an okay answer, but ask the question. You want to know what's available before you get into it. What are their hours of availability? Make sure that support's available during the hours that your business, that your practice is running, and that they're going to need the help. How long have they been in business? This is as a company. Who's the solution provider? You know, are they well established, or are they a startup that might be gone 2 months after I implement their solution? You want to take that into consideration. How many other practices are using this solution? This is a great question, because if this is widespread adoption, if it's used by a lot of different businesses, a lot of different people in the world, then that company is most likely going to continue supporting that solution and advancing it, you know, adding new features and other things. If it's not used by very many people, then most likely that support's going to go away. So this is an important question for you to consider if you're thinking about something that you want it to be well supported and you're going to use it into the future. Make sure that the company is well established and that the product itself is well established. And then of course referrals. This is an easy one. You probably ask for this for everything that you do. Ask for referrals. Ask for similar practices or businesses and similar implementations. So even if it's not the exact kind of service you offer, you know, for the things that you want it to do, ask, is there another example you have of other people using it in similar ways to the way I want to use it? They should be able to give you these fairly quickly. If it takes a long time or they stammer or anything like that when you ask for a referral, then maybe it's not the best solution. So it's very important. Again, these are general questions that you can ask. And then you want to come up with your own list. whatever the specific solution that you're looking at is, you're going to want to ask other questions, of course, for a document management system or an accounting system or whatever it is you're looking at. So come up with a list. You don't want it to be overwhelming, but you want it to be the most important questions that you feel you should be asking and that the answers are going to help you make your decision. Again, make sure that the questions are being tested against that business value statement. So if you find yourself creating this huge list of questions and then you look back at that business value statement and you say, half of these aren't really going to help me answer that, then you can cut your list down a little bit. Okay, getting to the assessment stage. So I've done a lot of preparation here, and I'm creating this running document for myself. So now what I've got is I have my trusted advisor group. They've given me input. They've helped me create my business value statement, what I'm trying to accomplish. I've got what I want my process to look like ideally, and I've got my evaluation criteria. So in this case, I didn't create a huge list. You may have 20 or 30, but I've got some criteria here for a document management system that I may be looking at, and then I've got them prioritized as well for importance. So I've got all of these things created now. I haven't filled in the right side of this yet. We'll get to that shortly, but I've filled in everything over here. So now I'm ready to actually start my assessment stage. First thing I want to do is build a list of options. And again, sometimes this is where people will start. They'll start by building a list of options. What are the available solutions out there? I'm going to do an internet search for best DMS solutions, and that's my list. I'm going to tell you it's probably not the best way to create a list for yourself. Start with your business value statement. Start with your processes, because if you start with this piece, then you're going to limit yourself. You're going to find yourself being limited by what features and requirements and functionality the systems have, as opposed to saying what you really want to get out of it and kind of forcing them to solve that problem for you. Best option, ask somebody else in this organization or another organization that you belong to, someone that's a trusted advisor. They're similar in the way that they run their business. They're similar in their needs. They're probably similar in what that business value statement is. Ask them, what do you use for this solution? Have you gone through and chosen a DMS system within the past year or two, and how's that working for you? So ask them what they're using. Ask a trusted technology advisor. If you use an IT consultant, if you have a business consultant, if you have any other people that you trust as far as business goes and operations, ask them. Do you have recommendations? And they may know of someone, even if they don't use it themselves. I work with lots of different businesses and customers. So in software, I deal with thousands of different software systems, and I know which ones succeed in implementations and which ones tend to fail in implementation. So asking a trusted technology advisor is a good way to go as well. And I'll say any other trusted people that you have would fall into that category. The third option is the internet search. And again, this is where a lot of people will start, and I would tell you it's not a bad thing to look on the internet to help build your list of options. It's a tough thing to use the internet as your only tool for doing your assessment, but help build your list of options, absolutely. Do that search after you've done the first two. And I would just say that if you're pulling in solutions from just an internet search, you're going to want to evaluate those a little more critically than the first couple. If someone's recommending something personally and you know how they use it and operate, and it's a trusted advisor, then probably you can put them on your short list pretty quick. If it's an internet search, you're going to want to do a little more evaluation and run through these next few steps more critically. Here's another thing. If you speak with someone that you trust, any of those first two groups, and they have a good reason not to use the solution, just strike it from your list. We're going to revisit this. We'll see this red X throughout the rest of the presentation about, it's all about shortening your list. It's all about spending the least amount of time that you can to determine something is not going to work for you, so that you can focus on the ones that might work for you according to your value statement. Next step, create a contact list. Get a personal contact for each solution that you're considering. This should be fairly easy. If they're one of those well-established businesses, they should have a sales team. They should be very eager to help you, and you should have a personal contact for any solution that you're actually considering. If somebody referred this to you, put their name next to that solution as well so that you can remember who referred this to you, and now you have multiple people. These people are being incorporated into your trusted advisor group, and they're going to give you feedback on what the solution does, and they're going to help you answer the questions that you have created for yourself. I would say, if it's not easy to talk to a real person, strike it from your list. So even for solutions which may be seen as small, you want to be able to talk to a real person about it, because that's the best way you can vet if it's a legitimate solution, if it's really going to work for me. So as you go through this, now I'm building my list. So now I've got these options, right? So I've built a list of, let's say 6 or 7 or however many it is. This one happened to be 6. This is the one that got referred to by me from another practice, someone that I trust and who runs a great practice management group. So I'm going to make that note here. Just plug in the contact information for everybody. This one happens to be one that, I couldn't find someone easily. I emailed them, I filled out their contact form. Nobody got back to me for a week. So I crossed them off my list. These are going to be the 5 that I focus on. And just fill in that contact information so you've got it all in one place so you can quickly communicate as needed. Okay, pre-qualification. We talked about your make or break items earlier. So here's where you want to do the pre-qualification. Again, you're trying to save your time. You're trying to do this as efficiently as possible. So you want to ask your contact, this is the person that you got in the last step, you want to have them help you with this pre-qualification. You want to try not to make it sound like you're pre-qualifying though. So basically you're trying to get these answers out of them without them making something up to make it seem like the solution does something that maybe it doesn't. So, a good way to just, you could say, we just kind of started the process. Here's a few of the things that we're looking for in this solution. Could you let me know how your solution handles these particular things? Make it seem a little more casual, even though in your mind, the way they answer those questions is gonna be a make or break and pre-qualification. So if they can't answer those make or break questions, take it off your list and you don't have to spend any more time on it. If it seems like they're hedging or they're coming up with a workaround solution that just doesn't feel right to you, take it off your list. And that's how the pre-qualification can really help you, having those nice short pre-qualification lists of items. And a look in here, so the examples I came up with for document management system is a make or break. Scanning has to be up to 1,000 pages per batch. And again, the specific requirements depend on you and the solution you're looking for and your business value statement that you did. But you could have 4 or 5 of these make or break things. Another one that I put on my make or break is that I need live support for this. If something goes down, if something goes wrong and it's not processing, I need someone that can help me right away. That's a make or break. So if you don't have either of these, I'm going to cross you off my list. So you can see in my 5 finalists, they all have those make or break things. So if they don't have them, they're not even going to make my evaluation criteria list here. All right, now that you've done your pre-qualification, you've shortened your list a little more. Now you bring your tag group back in. Involve them in this part of the process. Get their input as you evaluate each solution. So normally people will do this, but it might just be one-off. You might just say, here's one of the final things I came up with. Get their input as you go through each one for the criteria that are on your chart. So to get your answers, you're going to go through, ask your questions. That's your list of questions about the specific product itself again. Try to get your questions answered before you even schedule a demo. A lot of times, for packaged software, they're going to try and just do a scripted demo with you out of the gate, and they just want to show you all the features, which is fine. It's just that you just like a car, you want to understand, is this going to work for me? You don't want to go and then fall in love with this product because they showed you a bunch of shiny features, but it's not really what you needed for your business value statement. So before you get that demo, before you do the test drive, try to get your questions answered. If you're not satisfied with the answers they give you, strike them from your list. So you can do this through maybe a couple of calls and just say, first, I just want to go through some of the things, some of the questions I have about your solution and just run through them. You could do that on one call, and then you could schedule a demo on a separate call. If this is a pretty small solution or it doesn't have a huge impact on your group or your business, then maybe you'll do this all together. But you try to get the questions answered first, because if none of them satisfy what you're looking for, then you should just move on. You don't even need to waste your time going through the product itself. Then you've got your all-important demo or test drive. If you can coordinate this, and that depends on the solution. For a document management solution, it may be a little difficult to get a full-blown demo, full-blown test drive of the whole solution in place, because you're talking about hardware and scanning and integration and all those things. But they could demonstrate at the very least how the integration piece works, how the sorting piece works, show you examples of what's already been set up. You should definitely insist on some kind of a demonstration of the capabilities of that product, even if you can't see the full thing. So request that demonstration. Share your list of features and requirements ahead of time. Do that before you get the demo, because what you want is you want them tailoring to you, okay? Every software product developer or manufacturer is gonna have a script that they wanna run through, that they wanna show you what their top features are. You want them to show you what's important to you. So share that list ahead of time so that they know what's important to you. You can tell them at this point, these are the things that we feel we need in our solution. So force them to actually show you how it's going to fit into your vision. As you go through the demo, follow through your list, make sure that they're covering everything that's important, that's in your questions and your features list. Again, like I said, don't just let them run their script on you. Be an active participant, ask questions. If something doesn't seem right or it seems kind of paper thin to you, dig into it a little bit. Ask, okay, well, how about this situation? So if they're showing you one thing, ask about the different scenarios that you may run into. They don't need to be able to demonstrate everything on the fly. You know, not everything is possible to do that, but they should be able to answer your questions about how it works. If you do run into one of those things that they skip or they can't show you, it's okay. That's not a strike from your list kind of criteria here, because you can't demo everything, like I said. But if they can't show it to you during the demo, ask as a follow-up. Say, okay, here's these three things. I understand that we couldn't get to them today, but could you just maybe send me some follow-up information as to how those would work for us using your solution? So again, you're asking them to help provide this information to you instead of you having to figure it out for yourself. So give them that homework. Let them show you how it would fit. And if possible, again, this depends on the solution. If it's a type of software that you could get a free trial and just play around with it yourself, get some kind of a test drive, sandbox environment, you know, ask for that. Ask for that 30-day free trial. Actually set up some things similar to the way that you run. It's a great way to test things out. But also utilize if they have support available during that time, because you want to make that as close to how you're going to really use it as possible during that test run. All right, so as you're going through your demo, as you have a test drive of the software, this is when you just test against your criteria. So you want to objectively assign a common value to each of your requirements, and I'll show you on our example here shortly. You want to try to keep this simple. So this one is very simple. You've got check boxes or check marks and you've got red X's, okay? Very clear. This is just a yes, no. Now you're using something very simple. You could have a plus or minus, you know, that this is a benefit of this one, whereas this one, it's not that good. In my example, I'm using one that's slightly more complex, but only 3 options. I've got 1, 0, and -1. And that's as complicated as I would get. I would not recommend going on a scale of 1 to 10 or anything like that, because you're going to end up with a lot more gray area. You want to keep it simple. In this case, I may use 1, 0, and -1, whereas 1 means not only does it have that feature, but it's very good. It's going to help save us a lot of time. It's right in line with our vision. You know, it's right there, and it's really going to help. So that's a 1. It's a positive. 0 might mean it has that feature, it'll accomplish that. So I'm using the example here of the integration. Will it attach documents to our PMS in near time? 5 minutes was what we said we wanted. You know, these two, absolutely, it's got built-in integrations for all the top PMS systems, and it attaches them, you know, right away, say average 2 to 4 minutes each, so definitely hits our criteria. These two solutions, you know, maybe they have to create the integration with the PMS. So that means a little more work. Maybe you have to configure it a little more yourself. And maybe it takes a little more time for it to process behind the scenes once it's done, but it will do it. This solution here doesn't integrate with PMS at all. So I'm going to give that a -1. So it won't even accomplish that particular requirement that I have. So again, that's the most complicated that I would get. If you try to do a bigger scale, it's going to make it harder for you to make a decision later on. I would try to fill that out during the demo if you can. So have a different screen open for yourself if you have multiple monitors or a different computer nearby or laptop, and try to actually put in your initial guess of whether it's, you know, a positive, a negative, a yes, no, or, you know, 0, 1, -1. Try to put that in during the demo. Your initial perspective is probably correct. You can go back and adjust them later. You can ask follow-up questions and those kind of things, but try to do it as soon as possible during the demo or soon thereafter, because otherwise you'll forget and then you'll not quite remember, well, was it really a great solution or was it just okay, or maybe it didn't handle that and I can't remember if they showed that. So have it in front of you, go through it while you're doing it. So again, just to pause on this, this is an example of one that maybe I've filled out after getting demos of each of these systems, and I'm going down line by line, you know, and I'm asking questions and I'm seeing in the demo, is it doing this? Is it not doing this for me? Will it recognize header information? You know, all of these did a great job of that. This one doesn't do it. So I'm going line by line and I'm putting in what's the score for each of these things. And I'm going to use this to make my decision once I get to that point. Okay, next step in my collaborative evaluation. All of these are the strike it from your list things. So as you go through, if it's missing any of your make or break features, take it off your list. Even one, you've called this a make or break, so take it off if it doesn't match. If it becomes obvious at any point that it's not designed for what you plan to use it for, strike it off your list. You know, a lot of times when you are sharing your requirements and you're sharing the things you want it to do, and it's not really built to do that, if like half of the things that they're explaining to you seem like workarounds or something that's pasted together, or it's just not made to do this, you know, take it off your list. You want something that's made to do what you're looking for it to do. And then finally, if it's missing too many high priority features, once you prioritize these things in your list, like I've got these high priority and important things, if I start looking over, you know, this one over here, it just doesn't have these. This one's definitely coming off my list. This one here it just does okay on 3 of the 4 priority items, the important things to me. I might take this one off my list as well, and that way I can focus on just those other ones. My goal at this point, after I've gone through all of this, I'm funneling it down. I just want to get down to the top 2 to 4 options. The fewer you have at this point, the better it's going to be for you, because you're not just going to use that grid to make your decision. It becomes a little more subjective now at this point. So you do want to narrow it down. The objectivity and the tests and all those things are really built so you can help narrow the list of what you want to focus on to your top options. So now we're at the last step. If you've done everything up until this point very well, this should be fairly quick, fairly intuitive. You probably already have an idea for what direction you want to go. And again, the goal is to make the best choice confidently. Go back to referencing your trusted advisor group, get their feedback. For each solution, you want to create an overall assessment. And what you're assessing is, how close is this solution going to get me to that business value statement that I started with, you know, way back in the very beginning? So I've gone through the features, I've asked my questions, I've done all these things, and now I want to take a step back, knowing everything I know about my options, and say, how close is it actually going to get me to this original vision that I had? At that point, should be fairly simple. You want to combine that, how close it's going to get to your original vision, with the most reasonable investment itself. That's your ROI. So again, you can't ignore the cost, and that's why I've actually got the cost in here, and you can put in other costs as well. This is a very simple comparison matrix, and you probably will have a whole separate evaluation sheet for looking at ROI. But basically figure out what the cost is and how close it's going to get to your criteria. You know, in this case, I've got similar costs. If I look at my top 3 solutions, similar costs as far as initial goes. Now, annual cost, this one's a little bit higher, but also it doesn't have some of the features. So visually, I may trim this down to just these 2 as my top 2 options, similar cost-wise. Now I can start talking about how close does it get me to my vision. You know, if this one here was $30,000, you know, then it becomes a little bit easier of a decision because I've got to justify to myself that it's so much better that it's worth twice as much money up front. But if it's close, then it's a little bit easier, and then now I'm really just picking between the ones that will help me fulfill my vision the best. All right, so just to recap, 2 key things. Hopefully this has given you a framework that you can apply to any software selection, and that you could be a little more confident going in, doing the right preparation, going through, having your trusted advisor group with you the whole way through, having that document, that this is your nice outline now, that I've got everything written into the same place, trusted advisor group, business value statement, how do I want the process to run, what questions are important to me, what are my options, and I've got my comparison chart. So I've done my homework, and I know I'm going to pick the right solution at that point. So hopefully this has given you a couple of those things. I'll open up Q&A. Just one quick follow-up. After the session, if there's any questions, I'll have my email address in the presentation. I can also share the software analysis overview, that document that I showed you, and you could use it to make your own assessment. Also the comparison chart template. It's a very simple one. There's a lot more advanced ones out there, and you can build a lot more advanced ones in Excel and Google Sheets if you want, but I'd be glad to share the one that I did. There's also a blog series out there that you could read if you like, that goes more in depth into some of the concepts that I spoke about today. So with that, I guess we are ready for any Q&A.
Okay, if anyone has any questions, you can type them in the question box. It doesn't look like we had any during the presentation, so we'll just give everyone a couple minutes. Okay, if there are no questions for JP, then we'll go ahead and close the webinar, and it will be available online in the members only section, and we will be emailing it out to you as well. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, everybody.